Adaptations are nothing new for Hollywood, but this year there have been a lot of high-profile movies where the process of adaptation is a big part of the conversation around them. Maybe it's just me, but I've noticed a lot of people seem to think that for something to qualify as an adaptation, it needs to be accurate to the source material. I've seen some comments where people say something like this: "This isn't an adaptation, they're just slapping the name on something completely different." And maybe the people saying this don't mean that literally, they might just be expressing their frustration about changes they don't like. Either way, I think it's a great time to talk about what adaptations really are. What qualifies as an adaptation? How might we approach them as audience members? So, in case you didn't know, to give film adaptation the most basic definition possible, we could say it's to transfer a pre-existing story from another medium into film. That's it. But what does the root word mean? Merriam-Webster's definition of adapt is to make fit, as for a new use, often by modification. The Cambridge Dictionary says to change to suit different conditions or uses. And I'm sure most of us learned about biological adaptation in school. That's when organisms change their traits to fit new environments or circumstances. So, the idea that something will change in a process of adaptation is not only possible, it's an inherent part of the process. Adapting is changing. When it comes to adapting stories from one medium to another, some changes are obviously necessary. Movies are almost always going to be the shorter medium because they last only around 2 to 3 hours. So stories have to be condensed.
A last alliance of men and elves marched against the armies of Mordor.
But beyond logistic changes, filmmakers get to choose how closely they adhere to source material. Adaptations that try to stay very close to the original story are usually called loyal or close adaptations.
As you wish.
That day, she was amazed to discover that when he was saying "as you wish," what he meant was, "I love you."
Ones that take more liberties are usually called loose or broad adaptations.
Don't buy this tree, Foxy. You're borrowing at 9.5 with no fixed rate, plus moving into the most dangerous neighborhood in the country for someone of your type of species.
You're exaggerating.
But this binary split doesn't reflect the huge range of possibilities. There are a lot of different ways in which a filmmaker might try to bring the spirit of another story into a new context. So when we say something is loyal, do we mean in the tone, aesthetic, the character traits, the setting, the actual plot points, the themes? An adaptation could be very loyal in any one of these areas and then very loose in another. But even the loosest of adaptations doesn't mean it's an invalid adaptation.
Stranger?
The film industry has been doing adaptations since the beginning, including loose adaptations. A Trip to the Moon, for instance, was based on a mix of 2 different books by Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, Blade Runner, and Forrest Gump are just a few examples of movies that took such significant liberties in their adaptations that people often don't even realize they are adaptations.
I'm good, Big Dan.
I guess the real question is, does there come a point where something has deviated so significantly from a piece of source material that it can no longer be called an adaptation? My personal opinion? Not really. I'm sure there's some limit to how much you can change something before it loses all ties to the original, but I don't think we actually ever see that. As long as an artist is genuine in attempting to adapt another story, it doesn't matter how much they adapt it.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Did that really just happen?
One of the most famous examples of a bizarre adaptation is the movie Adaptation, which is itself a commentary on the process of adaptation. The screenwriter Charlie Kaufman was supposed to write an adapted screenplay for the nonfiction book The Orchid Thief, and instead wrote a movie about himself failing to write that adaptation.
I don't know how to adapt this. I mean, I should have just stuck with my own stuff. The book has no story. There's no story.
All right, make one up.
It still incorporates elements of the book and is technically an adaptation of it, but is also entirely its own thing, which actually is true of all adaptations. The debate about which version of a story people prefer has been around as long as adaptations have. That's how we get the famous phrase, "the book is always better." But do we really think books are such a superior medium over film that their stories are always actually better? Or is it that people usually say that because they were already attached to the story they'd first experienced as a book? Personally, I think the best way to approach any adaptation is to view it as a separate entity. If you go to watch an adapted movie with the hope that it will recreate the exact experience you felt when you encountered its source material,
a little slow tonight, isn't it?
you're probably going to be disappointed no matter how loyal the filmmakers may have tried to be. And it would obviously be even worse if you go into it specifically looking for changes and predetermining that you will be angry about them. I've said before in my videos that preconceived expectations are one of the best ways to not enjoy a movie. And watching a film adaptation where you're so attached to the original story that you would hate any changes is the most extreme version of that.
I trusted you!
Now don't get me wrong, am I saying we shouldn't compare versions of a story or that we can't have a preference for one over the other? Of course not. It's more than okay. In fact, I think it's a great mental exercise to analyze how different artists approach the same story. You can learn so much about a story, about its themes and characters and how it applies to our world by comparing and contrasting different versions of it. And you don't have to like all versions. The problem is when we start identifying changes or differences as an issue without any other justification.
Who does she marry?
No one. She doesn't marry either of them.
No. No, that won't work at all.
As we established earlier, changes are assumed when a story is being adapted. The Academy Awards have two different categories for screenplays, original and adapted. And the criteria for winning the Adapted Screenplay Award is not loyalty to the source material. It's which screenplay best altered the story to make it as compelling as possible for the medium of film. Film adaptations are never going away, so my advice would be to approach them as an opportunity for a completely new experience. If you're familiar with the source material, then you have the benefit of additional context. It's essentially like you got a peek at an early outline of the story. From there, you get to see how it evolved. You don't have to be angry just because changes show up. You can ask, why did the storyteller make that change? How does it affect the story? Does it alter how I view any of the characters or themes in interesting ways? I know this is a topic that people sometimes have strong feelings on, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on adaptations. Let me know.